What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Tuesday, August 16th. My name is Ewan, and today we are going to be catching up with Formula One with a summer break / silly season summary episode. It's been too long since I got a F1 podcast out there, and with the Belgian Grand Prix happening next week, I just wanted to catch up and see what's been going on in the sport. So today I will go through all of the drama that's happened since the Hungarian Grand Prix with silly season kicking off quite rapidly, and then I will transition over to the fantasy side because we are Backup Fantasy Sports here, and I'll take a look at some second half predictions and where everything stands as we hit the second half of the season. So what's happened since Hungary? Well, right before the Hungarian Grand Prix happened, we had Sebastian Vettel start an Instagram. Everyone got very excited, and then he instantly announced his retirement from the sport. So that was the first domino to drop during the silly season, and it didn't take long for that seat to get filled because the Monday after the Hungarian Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin announced a multi-year deal that would see the Spaniard go from Alpine to Aston Martin starting next year. So that means that there's an open seat at Alpine now, right? Well, Tuesday, one day later, Alpine took to Twitter, did some handshake with Esteban Ocon and Oscar Piastri, who is their reserve driver, saying that he would be taking the 2023 seat from Fernando Alonso now that he has vacated it. But then later that day, Piastri took to Twitter, and the former F2 and F3 champion said that, "I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I have not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year." Now, it's been about a couple of weeks since I read that tweet. I forgot how that's not even like a leave the door open, like a slight creak that, no, we just haven't agreed to it yet. That is like a definitive, I am not driving in your car for your team next season. That is break up, nice, clean, rip off the Band-Aid. Thanks for the memories, but I will see you later. So how are Alpine going to fill that seat? Where is Piastri going? Is it going to be McLaren? Because then last weekend, or 2 weekends ago at this point now, it was reported that McLaren will be terminating Daniel Ricciardo's contract earlier than his 2023 end of the contract, and they will sign the young up-and-coming F2 and F3 champion, Oscar Piastri, to their F1 team, and they are expected to give him the seat for 2023. Also, in the middle of all this, Williams Racing decided to have a little bit of fun, and they said that they had signed Alex Albon to a multi-year contract, so he will be back with the team he'll be back with the team for 2023 and 2024, I believe. So pretty much what does this all mean in terms of... So that was pretty much like a step-by-step rundown of what has happened so far with the drivers. But going into 2023, as of right now, only Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Aston Martin have all of their seats filled for 2023. That doesn't necessarily mean that the other 6 teams aren't going to keep their remaining drivers lineup. But as of right now, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz will be with Ferrari, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez will be with Red Bull, Sir Lewis Hamilton and George Russell will be with Mercedes, and Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll will be in the Aston Martin. That's the only 4 teams with a confirmed both seats taken for 2023. So that leaves us with Alpine, McLaren, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Williams, and Haas. Sounds like McLaren are going to go with Piastri, so we can knock them off the board. But Alpine will definitely have a seat open. Could that be a return to the East, kind of the Renault in disguise for Daniel Ricciardo? AlphaTauri have a decision to make about Yuki Tsunoda. Alfa Romeo, they have Valtteri Bottas locked down, but Zhou Guanyu could do with some improvement, and Williams will have a seat to fill with the likelihood that Nicholas Latifi leaves, and Haas do not have Mick Schumacher under contract for next year. But let's go back to the beginning here. So Alpine believe they have a contract with Piastri. They're going to go, sounds like they're going to go to court to recoup their money that they've invested in the young driver. And it sounds like McLaren will be the ones to pay. So McLaren will have to pay Ricciardo and possibly Alpine, because Piastri doesn't have that kind of money, just to get the one of the brightest stars in the sport in their second seat for 2023. So that's a lot of money for a team to invest in a driver who hasn't even raced in F1 yet. According to reports, their 4 teams have already reached out to Ricciardo to see what he's thinking about for 2023. My top 2 guesses are Alpine and Haas. He has a relationship with Alpine. He's driven in their car. He's been with that team before. And Haas as the American connection, with Daniel Ricciardo currently being the closest thing to an American driver we have on the grid. And he would be very popular in the States. He already is, but if he was racing for the Haas F1 team, that could only elevate him further in the United States. Over to Williams, their boss, Jost Capito, has several options to fill Nicholas Latifi's seat if the Canadian does not return for 2023. It definitely seems that way as of right now. Nick de Vries, the Dutchman, he has driven in 2 free practice sessions this season with Mercedes and Williams. He's the 2019 F2 champion. He's currently in Formula E. Capito has said that de Vries has a shot to get into F1, but I think the tea leaves are pointing towards American Logan Sargent coming in to the second seat with Williams. He's American, so you've got that going with the sport right now. Currently in F2, he's 3rd in the driver standings. It is his first year in Formula 2. So that would be quite a leap, and he still has to finish in the top 5 of the driver standings to have enough super license points to graduate to Formula 1 next year. But with Logan Sargent, that's a great name. That's just a great racing name right off the bat. The amount of the marketing department at Williams Racing must be drooling thinking about what they can do with that name. But if he came in, he would be the sole American on the grid. Huge money draw for the sport. I think there'd be a ton of companies waiting to line up to invest in Williams Racing. And also, if you look on WilliamsF1.com, so the Williams Racing website, there are 2 stories about Alex Albon. There's a best of 2022 picture roll. And then there are also 2 stories about Logan Sargent. There's no Nicholas Latifi on there. Everything seems to be lining up, and Jost Capito came out the other day and said he will be in a Formula 1 car in the future. I'm absolutely convinced. One way to guarantee that is to just put him there yourself, Jost. So my feeling is that Logan Sargent will be in the Williams second seat for 2023 as long as he finishes the Formula 2 season in strong fashion. They have 4 races to go. So he's currently 3rd, has to finish top 5 to get to F1. Apparently, the Williams' initial plan for 2023 was Alpine was going to sign Alonso to another 1-year deal, and then Piastri was going to get loaned to Williams for 2023. But obviously, that's completely gone out the window. So they are looking at plan B or C right now in the Williams headquarters. Like I mentioned earlier, AlphaTauri can keep Yuki Tsunoda. according to people much more involved in the sport with me, there aren't any other Red Bull Junior racers that have impressed enough to kind of challenge Tsunoda for his seat at AlphaTauri. So it sounds like he will be safe for one more season, but it would be great to see him put together some strong performances over the second half. And over at Alfa Romeo, they like what Zhou Guanyu has done in his first year. Some of the results haven't been there. He's had some bad luck, obviously. He had that huge crash at Silverstone, but he's been pretty solid. I've been impressed watching him drive. Him and Valtteri Bottas seem like a good team. It seems like that team has like good vibes around it. But the thing with Zhou Guanyu is Alfa Romeo, he's not under contract next year, and there's a certain legacy driver, Mick Schumacher, who doesn't have a contract yet either. Could Alfa Romeo decide to pluck Schumacher from Haas and put him in their 2023 second seat next to Bottas? Maybe a pipeline kind of move similar to Charles Leclerc going to Ferrari. But I think Schumacher would have to finish 2022 in quite impressive fashion for Romeo to kick out Guan Yu like that. But you never know. There's a lot of politics going on in F1 that a lot of us are not privy to. For Haas, K-Mag should be back. I think it would be quite a fun pairing to have him and Ricciardo next to each other. It kind of depends on where Ricciardo is at in his career legacy, in his thinking. I mean, personally, watching him the past couple of seasons, his championship hopeful days are behind him. He's not that driver anymore. He's not going to get a chance to get in a Mercedes, a Red Bull, or a Ferrari, at least for the next season and a half, couple of seasons. So a move to Haas would be classic. It would be great. I think he would fit that team. Good vibes, all that stuff. There's 3 races in the States next year. He could be the face of Haas Racing, Haas F1 in Miami, Austin, Las Vegas. I think it could extend his career a little bit, as Haas would just be kind of happy to have him, bring in some sponsorships, that kind of stuff. But it could also extend his career, because I think he was, if he thinks he's going to compete for championships still, then his F1 days may be over sooner than he thinks. So that was kind of the whole silly season wrap up. We're still in the mandatory shutdown period. People are starting to post that they're back in the gym. There's not as many I'm on a yacht, I'm in my private villa Instagrams coming out from the 20 drivers. But where do we stand going into the second half of the season? Well, Max Verstappen leads the driver standings here with 258 points. He is 80 points ahead of Charles Leclerc in second, with Sergio Perez in third. George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton are all within 12 points of each other. And Lewis Hamilton at 146 points is 70 points ahead of Lando Norris in seventh, with Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas, and Fernando Alonso rounding out the top 10. Over on the constructors side, Red Bull, not surprisingly, are dominating with 431 points, almost 100 points ahead of Ferrari, with Mercedes in third. And Alpine and McLaren are in a tight battle for fourth, with Williams all the way down here with 3 points in 10th. I'm curious to see, this is kind of my first year doing F1 Fantasy, and last year I watched the second half of the season after the summer break. I'm curious to see what all of this seat movement is going to have as like an effect on drivers' performance, where teams prioritize their upgrades, that sort of stuff. So does this make like Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen a lot more attractive options in F1 Fantasy, just because their teams know that they will be there next year. So are they more invested in giving them the upgrades and seeing how far these guys can push the car? I'm not sure how the dynamics of that play out. Obviously, the McLaren and Ricciardo relationship is quite tenuous right now. So are they just going to invest all of their efforts in Lando Norris down the stretch to make sure that he has as much, as good of an opportunity to win as possible? To be determined. I'm not sure if anyone's done any research on that. I haven't super looked into it, kind of just speculating, wondering like if the human element, the resources kind of come into play there with the cost cap this season. Our team's just going to possibly only invest in one side of the garage compared to the other. But let's move over to the F1 Fantasy fully, get the silly season out of the way there. So Belgian Grand Prix next weekend. We are going to be back. There's going to be a preview podcast. I got to get on the F1 fantasy game, kind of zoom around the track a few times there just to get a feel for it. I've played it a couple of times 2 weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. I did see that they've been changing some of the profiles of the corners compared to previous years. So there could be some differences in the track than longtime F1 fans are used to. So we'll see how that plays out. But for F1 Fantasy on streaks heading into Spa, we've got Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and Mercedes on qualifying streaks. And we've got Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and Red Bull on race streaks. So Lewis Hamilton's the only driver with both, and that would explain why he has risen so much in price over the last 2 weeks. As the price rises and falls, this has been a long break. Wondering if people have been using their wild card to try and gain value. I have, to be honest, completely switched off. This is my getting back into the F1 flow after 2 weeks of just kind of fantasy Premier League, fantasy football, prep, that kind of stuff. And now it's time to get back into the F1 fantasy. So risers over here on the constructor side, Mercedes are up 0.6, Alpine is up 0.1, and Alfa Romeo is up 0.7. And then on the driver's side for price risers, we've got Hamilton at 0.5, Gasly 0.1, Vettel 0.3 million up, Tsunoda 0.1, and Latifi up $500,000. Hamilton with the qualifying and race streak makes a lot of sense. Kind of wish I'd been paying attention there. That would have been nice to go from Verstappen to Hamilton and catch all those price rises, as I am just a few million short of doing what I would like to do with my team. As for the fallers in the F1 fantasy game here, we've got the constructors. Red Bull have fallen 0.4 million. With Mercedes going up 0.6, that means some of the money had to come from somewhere. But they are the only fallers as of right now. Must have been well owned, and Ferrari are still heavily picked in a lot of lineups. And as for the driver fallers, we've got Russell at 0.2. Charles Leclerc has fallen down 0.1. That's interesting. With Sergio Perez 0.2. Daniel Ricciardo probably 0.4. This is public sentiment here. Valtteri Bottas 0.1, and Zhou Guan Yu is down 0.1 million. So there has been a lot of movement over the summer break. Now that I am checking back in, I'll make sure to try and catch some of these price rises. Obviously, we have 6 subs every week. 3 of them are free, and then the rest cost 10 points, but you can activate your wild card. Maybe I need to remember this for next season, but summer break sounds like a good time to activate that wild card. We'll need to double check the rules actually on that to see if you can even do that, but that would be a fun way to catch some price rises and increase your team value. Currently, I'm sitting at $105.4 million. That's my team value. Feeling okay about the team. I do want to make some changes, but there's plenty of time to do that. Currently, I sit at 34,000 in the world out of 1.52 million players. Top 1100 in Germany, and leading my mini league, which is all that matters to me for bragging rights as of right now. The team I have right now is Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Kevin Magnussen, and Alpine as my constructors. That is what I ended the Hungarian Grand Prix with. I tried to go with the Alpine race streak. It worked out okay. Verstappen obviously came through, but Charles Leclerc, disastrous again. Carlos Sainz did okay. Lando Norris did fine. And K-Mag was kind of disappointing. So here, I want to get Red Bull back in my team. So I was looking this morning, playing with some prices. I want to get Red Bull back in as my constructor, but that means I'm going to have to lose Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, which is not a particularly big issue for me right now. So I can either do Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, and Alpine to Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, and Red Bull, which makes me very top and bottom heavy there. Or I can do Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, and Alpine to Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and Ferrari. The thing I mentioned earlier about is Alpine only going to prioritize Ocon as the season winds down. I'm not sure when it comes to them because they are in such a close battle with McLaren for fourth, and that would be such a big win for their team overall that they should still want Alonso to do well as the 2022 season winds down. But that's what I'm thinking about right now. I definitely think Verstappen and Leclerc right now are just essential to me. I know you can spread the funds out a lot more if you take Verstappen out, but he is just dominating the game. Red Bull are operating on a different level right now. Maybe you can get rid of Leclerc. I'm not sure, but Verstappen feels very must-have to me for the second half of the year as I try to gain some points and shoot my way up the global ranking. As we transition back to F1 a little bit, just giving some second half predictions here before the season kicks off fully next week for the second half. Teams will be back in the garage and the paddock getting stuff ready, so things will be moving fast and furiously. So I think Max and Red Bull are going to wrap this thing up, but I think they're going to wrap it up by Austin. So that would be with 4 races to go. That's trying to just make it a little bit bolder than just saying that Red Bull is going to win both of them. So I'm going to try and call when they do. So that would be in Japan. I think Mercedes have looked super strong here to end the first half of the year. And I think they're going to come back and win 2 of these final races. I believe that the car was looking good. The team seemed to be going on the right path as they try to bounce back in 2023. I think Lando Norris is going to get another podium just to put more of a ruffle in McLaren a little bit. I think Williams will get a couple more finishes in the points. Kind of got some good vibes about Williams now. Alex Albon signed up. It would be great if they got Logan Sargent, but need to see how he does in F2. And I think these next 2 are probably my boldest of all of here. I think Haas can grab another top 5. Hopefully those upgrades that they introduced in Hungary can begin to get that team back towards the top of the midfield again. I'm not expecting it to be a consistent thing, but maybe we can get another top 5 for the Haas F1 team. And this is probably the biggest stretch here, but I think Lewis is going to beat Charles in the driver standings and finish 3rd overall. I think it goes Max, Sergio, Lewis, Charles, and George to finish the year. And as for constructors, I think it's Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. As Ferrari cannot get out of their own way, they're not making any changes in the garage. I understand it's the middle of the season, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that is insanity. So that's kind of the silly season summer break summary. Next up, we've got the Belgian Grand Prix next weekend, August 26th to August 28th. That's just over a week away. Starting to get excited. It's going to be very good and fun to have F1 back on the TV. It's been a nice summer break, but maybe like 1 week too long. Maybe we could just do one shorter week, but what do I know? I'm not head of F1. That is their call. So you can follow me on Twitter at @UIN_OR_YOU_OUT. That's EUAN. I'll start tweeting out some F1 stuff over the next week here. I'll probably dive into the DraftKings DFS lineups as well. You can like and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Overcast, all those fun places. Don't forget that next week is the Belgian Grand Prix. Said that 3 or 4 times now, but F1 is back. It's going to be on our TVs. It's going to be lots of fun. And I appreciate you guys tuning in for the little halfway point F1 podcast. So thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.